Cool. Moving on, we've got being liked versus being respected.
So I think this is, especially for Quidditch, but in all sports, a really tough place to be. A leader does not have to be liked to be effective, but they do have to be respected. As many people, used to think that you wanted all of your teams to be best buddies and be everyone's friend and get on and spend every waking minute of every moment together. I mean, at uni, that's almost achievable. But it's naive to think everyone's going to get on. Personality is going to clash, or people might not gel. You don't need everyone to be best mates. You just need them to respect each other and respect their decisions. In the same way that as a leader, you need to stand by your decisions and your ideas. It doesn't matter if people like the choice, but if they respect the choice and understand why it's being made, then that's okay. If you see a leader flounder, then their authority is easy to question. If I see someone reverse on a decision or get convinced out of it, then I'm going to question every decision they make. So it's best to bend, not break. You can take on advice. You can alter the decisions you've made. You can allow questions. You can allow, people to have their own ideas, but you need to make it clear that you're in control and you're the person that is making the decisions. Taking feedback on board is great, and you should do that, but you shouldn't just change your mind because, one of your social influencers has decided that they know best. Especially if you're the elected leader of the club, then you need to make sure that your say is final. Okay? Respect is the key. You don't need to be everyone's best mate. Obviously, you should still be friendly and kind to them and all that decent human stuff. But you need to be respected, okay? This can be difficult and it can affect your emotions. And emotions are fine, but you can't let the emotions rule the leader. The leader needs to rule the emotions, okay? Being an emotional, figurative leader's fine, but don't let it take over, because emotional decisions can occasionally be bad ones, or you'll end up saying things you don't mean or making decisions you don't like and then have to backtrack on. Dan, James, any other questions? I'm always liked, so this was a hard one for me to talk about.
The being respected thing is really important, because if you don't have that, making difficult decisions and having difficult conversations are almost impossible. So if you're having to cut a player, potentially down from first team to second team, or not being rostered, if you're not respected in that decision, then you're just asking for trouble. The player will potentially question it quite verbally, like publicly, and will nitpick the other things. You need to have that respect. They need to have trust in you that your decisions are for the benefit of the club or for the team. And if you don't have that, it isn't going to work, no matter how well liked the person is. And it is hard, especially at uni teams, or even at community teams. It's not like other sports, like professional sports, where the coach, the captain, the manager, whatever, is like kind of removed. These are your friends, these are your social circle. So making tough decisions is your job and is tricky, and if you're not respected, it's not going to end up well for you. It can put a lot of mental toil onto you to do that. But you just have to work on it. You have to show and build that respect over time to enable you to make those tougher decisions. Dan, okay, cool. Social influence.
No.
So an aspect of leadership widely overlooked in Quidditch, despite being quite prevalent in sport, is your social influences. These are your social leaders. You will probably have lovingly heard them referred to by me as Team Bin Juice. Okay, I've got a cap with it on for Team Bin Juice. So Team Bin Juice probably not going to be the best players. They're probably going to be the last sub. But they are the social heart of your team. They're the first one there with something to say. They're going to pick you up. They're going to support you. They're going to have a laugh. They're probably going to be, quite entertaining and quite outspoken in Quidditch. and they are basically the people that help the wheels turn. So when you're a leader, you want the social influencers on your side, okay? They're the most social, supportive members of the club. They're outspoken about what they think. Now, if I'm the captain of my team and I go home because I've had enough, and then in the pub, one of the team bin juicers going, what a waste of time. What an utter waste of time. This club is a burden on my life. Everyone else is going to go, maybe old bin juice over there has got a point. Maybe that was a waste of time. Maybe that training wasn't as good as it could have been. Something to bear in mind is hierarchy in training and on pitch will transfer to a social setting, but also vice versa. People that are widely regarded socially when you hang out, when you're speaking, whether people realise it or not, they are going to get, you know, the hierarchy in training. If there's that super outspoken member that everyone likes, people are going to find it difficult to disagree with them. And this isn't to say that you should be, you know, like 1984 in your socials and, you know, making sure the message that's transmitted is the one you want. But it's important to keep these people on side, have the conversations. Because even though they're not maybe the best players, they are going to be the lifeblood of your team. And team socialising is massively impactful on how they perform on and off the pitch. So it's really important to bear in mind that what people say out of training does have an impact in training. Let's go bin juice. And yeah, so that's, in conclusion, just some last points. Leaders will fluctuate over your time with the club, but it's important to have one voice leading the charge. Okay, adopt your own style of leadership to be successful. Respect is the key. Respect your club, your mates, and yourself. If you don't have respect, you don't have anything. Realistic goals and expectations for your club, your players, and your development. There's no point trying to achieve something that you can't do. One of the biggest compliments I got given as a coach was, what I enjoy about your training is that you expect a lot of us, but are also able to do it. And I think that's what you're aiming for, is setting a high expectation that's actually achievable. Make every message meaningful and impactful. Everything you say has to mean something. Lastly, inspire someone, motivate them, stimulate them, and then facilitate their success. And those are just a drop in the ocean for how to be a good leader and a successful leader. Dan, did you have any questions?
I have a point before Dan has a question. Just
go on, James.
jump in there, everybody. Sorry, Dan.
I do have questions, so yeah, James.
Something that we've touched on but hasn't necessarily gone into super detail about is, and it's to do with that first point about leaders fluctuating, is having a plan for the next wave of leadership. Essentially, creating your own successor is quite important. So Jay made the point earlier about how if you're doing a good job as your leader, you're raising up other people who will naturally fill into those gaps and will work in the back half of the season on that. But you need to have a plan in place for how you're going to progress your club after you've moved on, either through retirement, transfer, injury, whatever myriad of reasons it is that you're no longer in that position. Something to think about, and it's especially true given the cyclical nature of teams within Quidditch, but especially at university, where first year you just play, second year you might have a bit of authority, and third year at the end of that you're gone in the most part. So actually, how do you have a smooth transition of power of leadership while still propelling your club forward? It's just something to have at the back of your mind and be thinking, how can I leave this in the best possible position as a legacy, essentially? Yeah, just the point. Dan, sorry.
Yeah, Danny boy.
Yeah, I've actually got a couple of questions. The first one is around, you said about obviously the social leaders, social influencers, however you think of it. You are obviously, you know, the head of the team of the club. These sort of social leaders spring up kind of out of nowhere almost. You know, they come from the socials. They're not necessarily someone that you've picked. how would you sort of advise people if either A, that social influencer doesn't have the same views as you, or to kind of convince them to be on your team? Because obviously, like you said before, everyone's got to pull in the same direction. What do you do if there's some of those people that are pulling in the wrong direction? Like you said, saying that was crap about a session when it wasn't crap, it was actually good, but they just have different views and opinions.
I
makes
think
sense as a question.
Yeah, I think if you're clashing with anyone, that's when you have the chat outside of training. And the chat's really simple. It's, I know you might disagree with what we're doing, and that's fine, and I'll happily speak to you about that. But at the end of the day, the decision is mine about what direction we're taking the club in, and you need to get on board and row in the same direction. By not doing that, you need to explain to someone that they are hurting the club, and that they are disrupting the club, and they might be doing that by accident, which is usually the case, or they might be doing that on purpose for their own means. And if that is the case, that's when you need to question where their place is in your club, personally. I think that's really difficult. But if someone's sole decisions they're making is to prevent the progress of the club and prevent the success of the club, you've got to give them the opportunity to change. But if they don't change, that's when you have to have the most difficult discussion about if it's the place for them. Because if they're going to turn up every training and, you know, rock the boat, then maybe I don't want them there anymore. And that's obviously a last resort, but it all starts with having that conversation, finding out why they're doing it. Usually it comes from they've got an issue with something that's happening to them. They're not getting the respect they think they deserve. They're not getting appreciated. They've got issues at home. They've got issues with someone in the club. But it's just about having that dialogue, because the more you ignore a problem, the more it grows.
Yeah, I think meeting that early,
Yeah, it's never just
in the bud, has got to be done. Because, you know, people can be frustrated and speak out and whatever, and that is fine. You don't want a dictatorship. You want people to feel comfortable to air grievances, but it's way more helpful and productive if those grievances are aired at the person who has the ability to affect change. So ideally, before this, you create a culture where people are happy to come and talk to you about it, and you as a leader, whilst you are ultimately responsible, should be open to suggestion, feedback, comments. Like, you might be wrong, they may have a viewpoint you've not considered, and you want them to be able to approach you and have that conversation. That's part of being respected. That's part of being a club or a team, like actually a team, where you can have those difficult conversations. But then moving forward, if it's still disruptive, if it's still negative, if it's just toxic, then you need to have routines in place that allow you and empower you to remove those elements.
Cool. Yeah. Okay, so sort of in a almost on the flip side of that, both of you have or are currently in Team UK. I imagine that a lot of the people there are probably high-up leaders, if not captains, of their club teams. So how are you supposed to manage that when everyone is a leader? It's obviously a problem not having any, but what do you do the other way around?
I think with...
Hey, James, you want to go first?
Change, yeah. For me, honestly...
Whoever, just...
Yeah. It honestly wasn't that big a deal. In such a way as you would expect. I've had bigger issues at club level with people coming into the club and being a leader from their uni team coming to a community team than coming to Team UK, because in general, we all know why we're at Team UK. We all know the direction we're pulling towards, and having come from being a player in the squad to assistant to head coach, I'd like to think I'd built up the respect with the players that they've trusted my decisions, even if they didn't always agree, which helps alleviate some of that issues. Everyone there is obviously a very good player. They aren't all necessarily leaders of their team, in that regard. What is helpful is having a conversation with those influencers, those people early, and showing them what your stall is, I guess. So, you know, when I was head coach, we had captains for it was Warwick at the time, but Warwick or LPC, Werewolves. We had a lot of players from Raptors, a lot of like the players from the university teams. We had a lot of their leaders as well. So having those sort of 7-8 people and just pitching your idea to them is helpful. And generally, like I say, everyone's pulling in the same direction by necessity because everybody wants to win World Cup, everybody wants to win EG. And so I think it's easier because your position is slightly more removed. You have the respect already because you've been picked for that position. You're not necessarily best mates with all the team because they're not your immediate social circle. That makes those elements easier. Not easy, but easier. Jay?
Yeah, it was a bit different for me. I think James is right. Like, people appreciate you're not elected for no reason. You have a degree of success. People would argue that if you're the head coach of Team UK, you are, or if not, are one of the best coaches in the country, or you'd hope to think. So people have that inherent understanding. For me, it was a little bit different. Obviously, I was never deemed good enough for a shot at the national team, so started my career in my lowly assistant coach of X-Bam when no one knew what X-Bam was. And gradually worked my way up the coaching ladder for over 4 years. But what happened was a lot of those players that were in X-Bam sort of came with me. And we're at a point now where there's like, I think over 15 players in Team UK that went on that X-Bam journey with me, from assistant coach to head coach of X-Bam to assistant coach of Team UK to, you know, head coach of Team UK now. And they respect the journey I've been on. They respect the effort that I've put in to get to where I've been trying to get to for such a long time now. And also people respect the effort you put in. It's like we were saying with a player, people appreciate effort, and a coach is none the same. Like I definitely wear my heart on my sleeve at Team UK. But it's about showing people you care and showing that effort. And as long as you're able to explain to people the decisions you're making, they're going to respect it. And it's like I was saying earlier, a good head coach makes themselves not needed anymore. And I like to give leaders the chance to, you know, advise on drills, run drills, have a say within their team, hold people accountable. Maybe if someone's slacking, it's, you know, I'll wait to see if any of the leaders pick someone up before I say something. And usually if the leaders in the club have sorted it out, I don't need to say anything. And that comes with, you know, a respect for each other, but also a respect for my authority. If I have to get involved, then that's showing people that we, you know, that dad's having to have the talk with you now, and that the siblings can sort it out amongst themselves. But I've always gone as a coach where if you show other people respect, it will come. Like, not to get too deep when we're going into it, but like Quidditch and life aside, like I've had some pretty rough times and some pretty hard times. And I think if you're honest and personable about that, then people relate to it. A lot of people think their coach needs to be superhuman, and that's where they make the mistake. I think at Team UK, I make it very clear that I am human and that I'm just trying to push on for the best of everyone. And yes, I might have, you know, knowledge that other people don't. And I like to think that I'm pretty good as a coach and as a leader. But as long as you make it clear everything you're doing has got their best interests in, then people are going to get on board fairly quick.
I think it's that last bit, I think, sums it up quite nicely. You share what you're about and how you're benefiting the group, and people get on board. I know if people thought that it wasn't pulling in if the ideas that the head coach was making were not in the best interest of the team or the club or the whatever, then they would shout up and make that point. But as long as you share your stall, if you share your ideas and these things, generally people are happy to go on board because they see it as right.
Any other questions, Dan?
Yeah, one more.
Here we go.
this is kind of a double-headed question. So both of you have tried to play other sports in your life as well.
I mean, I have played others.
From those, you might not even.
Sorry.
So obviously we might not know them, but is there a leader that you played under or with in any of those that really sticks out? And also, kind of leaders that you look at and you kind of, like you say, you don't copy, but you kind of are sort of inspired by or get ideas from outside of.
So from people I've
Quidditch
been led by outside of, there are a couple. I've had some teachers. I was thinking like under 15 level rugby. My coach for that had just had a really good grasp of the game. They made sure that we were always in the best position to succeed, focusing on our fundamentals, making sure everybody had the skill set required to play, regardless of the position they were in, so that we could move around. Because it's age range rugby. Positions are flexible. People grow quicker than us, all this kind of stuff. So they were just very good in that regard. And so it kind of taught me the benefit of teaching the basics well. And it's something I try to push forward on, even if it's not necessarily the most flash thing in the world. And then the other one is, so I played hockey essentially since I was like 4. And my club coach while I was at uni, so I played for my local club team, and he was our captain and coach, and he was excellent at all of the outside of, I mean, he was good on those things. He was excellent at the outside of the game stuff. So he would make sure everybody had a lift to the matches. So we were playing all around Nottingham, sometimes over into Derbyshire, and we were lowly students and did a drive. And so he would make sure there was a lift. And if that meant traveling twice, like there and back, to pick up people and get them there, he would do that out of his own back. If people were having difficulties paying subs or things like that, or fines for the club, he would make sure that they were paid for. Like, he would help that. Like, and he again did this out of his own pocket. And like, wasn't being taken advantage of. He was like, he wanted people to be able to play, and he knew that people came from different circumstances, and he took that all on board. And he was just very much looking after the players in his club holistically, rather than just seeing them as cogs in his hockey playing machine. And so it's been 10 years now, and we're still in contact. He's still really good at that, and he still works for that club, and he still pushes on the next set of kids going through. Yeah, shout out to James Snellis, excellent man.
Jay?
Growing up, I wasn't that much of a sporty kid. Like, I played rugby, and I'm pretty decent at that. But my team wasn't particularly nice, and there weren't many particular leaders, which probably slowed us down quite a bit. As well, like growing up, myself and my parents, we always ended up doing a lot of leader stuff ourselves, just because we had to. Like, we didn't have like many other people we could look to sometimes for stuff. So we always would like step up and look after ourselves for things like that. Like at school as well. Like, I knew the one person I could rely on to do something was me. So I would try and take the lead for stuff just because I know I could get it done, and a lot of other people couldn't. But for uni, it was probably the handball captain. There's a guy called Scott Wiley. He was the first guy that I'd played sport with that when he captained, I was like, oh, this is super different. So he was obviously a great player. He's a really great guy in trainings, facilitating the team being really good. He would stimulate it. He'd have a laugh. He'd make fun of himself. He was pretty chill, but he played super hard and he played to win. And he'd let you know if he didn't think you were contributing to the cause. But it was the first handball social I went to. He made sure that I was really involved, and that everyone else was sort of got involved in the social side of it. And like introduced me to some of the guys and the women that he knew I'd get on with, and I got to meet them, and that was really cool. But he was also like quite a good captain, like James says, holistically. Like he'd keep people in line. He'd make sure everyone was all right. He'd make sure people got to the socials. He'd make sure everyone was involved. He'd make sure no one stood out of line. And at the time, it was really weird for me. I remember complaining to Quidditch, and I was like, God, the handball captain. He thinks he's captain all the time. What's wrong with him? And then I realised that's exactly what I've become as a captain and as a leader. And he was just he set the benchmark for me of what uni sport could be, of what like a good leader was. And obviously in Quidditch, like I've played with lots of great leaders, but I've also been the leader a lot. But Scott's the one that stands out for me as someone that I know has directly influenced me when I played with them as a captain, because he was a pretty sound guy, and he made sure everyone else was pretty sound as well. So big shout out to Scott.
Nice. And what about then? Because I know obviously Jay, you've got lots of
got me books.
Yeah, you got your books. So I mean, leaders that you sort of aspire to. I'll let James go first.
Yeah, go on.
Yeah, because Jay, I've got a 20-minute rant just on how many people he likes. Mine's a relative. You'll pick one, will you? Sure. So outside of it, so it's still within sport, I like attention to detail. So like having a plan and following through and seeing all the variations of it. So coaches that have had that, are like quite high up on my list. So honestly, like people like Bill Belichick, like I'm not the biggest NFL, like American sports fan, but the idea that you can work that hard with that much thought going into something and seeing the benefit of it and it paying off is, I think, inspiring. Even if he's not necessarily the nicest man to be in the opposite dugout from. But yeah, that level of detail, that level of thought, control, effort into a project, and it's working consistently over time to show a process, to show a legacy, is, I think, something to aspire to. Yeah.
If James is
so
what else?
I was just going to ask, is that like marginal gains that Clive Woodward and Dave Broyles would go at, or
a similar
like
idea?
The same? I don't know much about it.
Yeah, so it's essentially looking around all the variables,
cool.
all the information you can get.
Yeah, Bill Belichick is, if you do your job, then
Jay.
If you don't do your job, that's where issues come. So I've got a myriad of people I can pick, but I'll pick the compliment to James's Bill Belichick, and I'll say, whatever you think of him as a human being, Tom Brady as a leader is absolutely an incredible leader of men, genuinely inspiring to watch as a player. And it doesn't matter if you like him, doesn't matter if you think he's actually good at football. He's amazing. He's the best quarterback ever. I don't care. And I don't even support the Patriots. But how he galvanizes his team, keeps calm in scenarios where literally the odds are against him, is absolutely fantastic. And what I always like about Tom Brady is off the pitch, he's a pretty cool guy. He's pretty relaxed. He'll have a laugh. He'll make fun of himself when he needs to. The dude's an absolute psycho. He is a cold-blooded machine when he needs to turn it on. And he will shout, and he will get his team on board, and he will let them know that he's taken them on the journey, and they need to get on and ride the bus. And I think that's amazing, especially not to get too much into it, but as like basically an upper class, quite shy dude who is quite reserved, that he can galvanize such a diverse team for 15 years. It's just such a testament to his leadership and his growth as a person. So I think how Tom Brady's still been one of the best leaders in American sports for basically his whole active career. That's pretty inspiring.
Nice. Yeah, that's all my questions. Thanks very much, guys.
Lovely.
No worries. That'll do for this episode of Backtoops. Remember, you can find this video on our YouTube page, but you can also find it on our website, backtoops.com. You can get this PowerPoint as well. It also has a load of other resources you can look at, including videos, written articles and content, as well as some other analysis. We're making this guide for you. If you have a topic you think would be beneficial to the community for us to talk about, or a resource you think that's missing at the moment, let us know, and we will try and fit it into our schedule. Yeah, we're trying to make this for you. Please help it be as useful for you as you can. Take care. See you all soon.